If you feel like you're going through life too fast, it's like, just look for a detail.
You've already achieved goals you said would make you happy.
Because we all know the happiness formula, which is when this happens, I'll be happy, right? When X, I'll be happy. Or if X, I'll be happy. I think that just serves as my biggest reminder. But it's also why I probably am a pretty existential nihilist overall. Because I've had so much evidence that none of those things, quote, brought me joy, but the things that we were talking earlier about anticipation being kind of the hot button on pleasure.
Yep.
I feel like the hot button on joy for me is what I'm doing right now. So like I haven't done the event yet, right? I haven't given the presentation. When I'm putting that work in and doing the reps, like that's when I'm actually my most in flow and enjoying myself the most. And so it's actually a lie that I've been telling myself that like once the presentation goes well, I'll feel good. Because in some ways now I feel like when the presentation happens, I'll be disappointed because I won't get to do this anymore.
Yeah.
I'll have to find something else to pick as a target so that I can get back into my Rocky cutscene. And so I think that has taken some time, and I've gotten better at it. I really do think I've gotten a lot better at it. At least recognizing, because the more times I've had W's and then realized that right afterwards I felt nothing, I had to think back of like, what are the things that I enjoyed most in my life? And it's always in pursuit. And I'm like, well then, why don't I set something really big, really far, so I can be in pursuit for the longest period of time possible? And that's where I think a lot of people from the outside, they cast their expectations of life onto me and say, I wouldn't live my life that way. You're always working, you're always doing these things. But it's like, I'm actually always spending my time in pursuit, because in pursuit is my button for enjoyment.
Well, what about if it wasn't achieving the thing at the end? If the reason that you set yourself goals is exclusively to motivate yourself to enjoy the route toward those goals. And I know that it's not the destination, it's the journey is kind of cliche.
Yeah.
And I think this is slightly subtly different, which is that it's actually about setting the destination. Without the destination, you wouldn't do the journey.
Yeah.
Like the way that you set goals and then achieve them, and the dopamine and the trigger that you get. I often think about the balance between like serotonin Chris and dopamine Chris. And
I don't even know the difference between those.
It's like, am I feeling sort of lovey and present and wanting to connect with people, or am I driving toward a thing because I have a goal that's in front of me? And I'm very sort of dopamine Chris a lot of the time. But I genuinely think that if you remind yourself, these are the golden years.
Yeah.
Like this right now.
Yeah.
This, when you look back, these will be the golden years, right? When I had my health, I had my full mental capacity, I had control of my bladder, I had all of the money that I needed to do the things that I wanted, to crush it with my friends, to fly around America and film these podcasts, or to launch this book that I spend all of this time on. Yeah. And you can even see it in the micro. You can even see it when you look back on stuff that you've done in your day-to-day business, or what you did at university. What were the times that you enjoyed? Was it when success came to you easily? Or was it when you stayed up and ordered Domino's because you had that project that needed to be in at 6 a.m. and you ran an all-nighter and John slept under the table and everybody ordered Monsters, and then the next morning we got it done? What was good about that? Was it when you submitted it? Or was it the Domino's and the 3 a.m. sleep under the table? Because I'm pretty sure it's that.
I love this as a side note. But one of the things that really motivates me, or one of my most powerful motivational frames, is thinking about the person that I want to become as the destination. And thinking like, I want to be bulletproof. I want to be bulletproof in these ways. I want to be bulletproof in my marriage. I want to be bulletproof in my business, etc. And I think about that man, whoever I want him to be. Like we said, hell is when you look at who you could have been and realize that you're not that person. And then I think, if I were to make that man, what would I put that man through to make him who he is? Like, it wouldn't be easy times. It wouldn't be quick wins. It wouldn't even be easy wins. It would be the toil and the struggle of achieving and reaching for things that are right out of grasp, that are right above my threshold, and continuing to do that to like lift the weight, to build the muscle, to break it down and do it over and over again, because like that's what creates the character traits that are the man that I want to be. And so when I'm going through those like really harder times, I like to think of like looking in my mental mirror of like, I'm making you. I'm not there yet, but I'm making you. And that has helped me get through some of the harder times. And from a gratitude perspective, my most powerful frame for gratitude has been thinking about my 85-year-old self, waking up as my 30-year-old self, and all of a sudden looking at Layla and be like, man, I remember when we were this young. And then looking out the window and be like, man, Vegas wasn't even developed. Like, there's no flying cars yet. Like, man, they were still used gas. Like, this is so cool. And I get out of bed and I'm like, man, my elbows don't hurt. My knees don't hurt, right? Because I'm thinking about what my 85-year-old self would think. And, we're talking about whatever, but it allows me to enjoy the mundane in a way that I know that I would give everything that I had when I was 85 to enjoy again. And it's a trippy frame, but like, if you can think like, what would 85-year-old me would be like? I'm just not, my body doesn't hurt. You know what I mean? Like, I actually have energy. Like, I can think clearly. I don't have brain fog because I'm 85, right? And that has been probably my single most powerful frame on feeling grateful, and allowed me to feel more present at times when I start to feel like I'm going through the motions and just like clicking in the routine and just like day after day after day, and they feel the same. That's been my biggest slowdown, where I can pull the reins and be like, and mind you, it lasts a few minutes. But when I think back on the days where I use that frame, the part of the day that I remember is just the few minutes that I use it.
So I did this episode with Sam Harris. Yeah. A lot of people have problems with Sam Harris. I found the time that I spent with him unbelievably enjoyable. I sat opposite him and a couple of times caught myself thinking, I am having so much fun doing this. And he said this thing, and I really wish that I'd asked him another question. I should email him about it. I was talking about presence and the importance of presence, and you could use it as a proxy for gratitude. Yeah. And he said that really what you're aiming to do is find small moments in the day when you just open up and realize what's happening, right? Conor McGregor won the featherweight title twice because he won the interim because Aldo was injured, right? And then he won against Aldo. And somebody asked him, what are you going to do differently this time again before the Aldo fight that you didn't do against in the Mendes fight? He says, this time I'm going to be present. And there's this photo of him, and he stood like this at the weigh-in, and you've got this entire stadium in front of him, and he stood like that. He said the first time he did it, he couldn't remember it because he was just drowning in what was next. Yeah. And what I really loved that Sam said, and I think that, you look at somebody that's a master meditator, or you set yourself high bars for what it means to be mindful, and you realize that you can be present with a sip of a coffee. Okay, I can be present with this one sip of a coffee, and then it, like sand in your hands, or like trying to remember a dream, it just evaporates, right? Okay, well, what if your goal was just to try and get 5 of those a day? Yeah. What if that was it? What if being mindful was just 5 moments when you allow yourself to be where your feet are underneath you? And then what if you tried to just string like 2 of those together 5 times a day? Like just this first sip, and then as I put it down, the view out of the window. Oh my God, like that's 2 things in one. Yeah. And then I can do that 5 times. And if I'd asked him, I would have said, really is the path to just increase the frequency of the times that you are where your feet are underneath you. And one other cue that I love that I got from an embodiment coach is the times when you see in your peripheral vision, you're looking, and the way that our vision actually works, you're focused so heavily on what's directly in front of you. If there's ever a time when you see what's out here, you realize that it's impossible to see all of that and not be in the present moment because you've naturally just opened yourself up. And I love that cue. So during the times when I'm doing things like that Sam episode, I'm like, the next question, and there's millions of people watching and all this stuff, and there's this guy in front of me and he's super smart or whatever. This is fucking cool. Just that one moment. And that, when I look back on that episode, that's what I enjoyed. That's what I enjoyed about it. So I think that being where your feet are underneath you and allowing yourself to open up and stringing those together largely allows you to enjoy being whilst you're in the process of becoming.
It's also interesting, those moments, you can capture a moment independent from your surroundings, because a lot of times those moments, you're not thinking about the goal that you have, the meeting that you have, the prep that you have to do for some talk or some podcast or whatever it is. And I can't remember where I heard this, but they were talking about Gladiator, the movie. And the film opens with this like little bird on a bough, right? With like the leaves and whatnot. And then they zoom out from that little bird on the bough. And it's this disgusting war scene, right? And so it's kind of like micro, macro, micro of how no matter how tough, whatever the moment that you're going through is, if you can just take a picture of the corner of the room and look at the beauty in that, right? Of being present in that moment, even if it's the suffering, right? Like you get punched and you're spitting blood out, but it's like this moment that you capture, then all of a sudden, like everything fades away and you are present. And so it can take this, what would be a brutal war scene of death and dismemberment. And the thing that makes it memorable is the zooming in on a detail.
Yep.
And so it's like, if you feel like you're going through life too fast, it's like, just look for a detail.
Whenever I wanted to try and get myself back into the present, I used to have brain fog a lot in my 20s.
Oh, really?
And maybe not brain fog, maybe just the clarity of my thoughts now is so much better than it used to be. I don't fucking know. Maybe I was hungover. Yeah, I mean, that was a big, maybe it was just the drugs. I don't know. But one of the things I used to have this, I still have this BMW sat on my drive with a perforated steering wheel. And I remember that if I ran my thumbs across the steering wheel and I really felt the perforation, really felt it, or I'd do it with a leaf. I'd pick a leaf up and I'd really feel the sensation of the leaf. I couldn't think about anything else. You can only have one thought at one time. You cannot think two things, right?
Yeah.
You have a supercomputer inside of your head and it's got 1 megabyte of RAM.
Yeah.
So just think the one thought.